I'm just sorry. Something happened literally, and then just dropped stuff for me. But anywho, welcome back, Ruby Uncensored. Thank you so much, guys. If it's your first time, I'm asking you to subscribe to the channel. But if you're my regular, I want to say thank you so much for your support and stick around. We're gonna have fun. All right, so we're looking at Tendai Biti to expose Mnangagwa's brutal hatred for Zimbabweans, the brutal regime that we talk about all the time. So yeah, we are here, we are today. Yeah, are you good? What's up? Happy weekend to everyone. Happy weekend. I'm sorry about that. Unbelievable, really unbelievable. Nessa, good to see you. Now you're first in line. Last time it was literally Susan, but this time it's Nessa. Your first in line. It's very hot in Joburg. But God is good. We must be grateful. At least we are alive. What about those that went to heaven? So we need to be grateful always. All right. So good to see everyone. And I want to say happy weekend. All right. So let's go quickly, really. Let's just listen to what Tendai Biti is saying. I've told you that Tendai Biti and, he's very close to Hope watching on their bodies. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm really sorry. Something happened with my network and dropped immediately. So please bear with me. But anyway, we are back. So I would like you guys to take a listen to what Tendai Biti was said, actually. And Hope watching on said, Vintage Tendai Biti tearing apart the ZANU-PF anti-people budget. He asks an important question. Did Mnangagwa and the ZANU-PF actually win the August 2023 elections? He argues that nobody who won an election would punish the very people that voted for him. So did these people really win an election? We all know, and we can ask the question, did the ZANU-PF really win an election? We all know. Did they win an election? Definitely not. Definitely not. You can see by their behavior, their actions actually can tell you that they never won an election.
There are better ways of catching those people that are not paying tax.
Hi, Emmanuel. Good to see you.
The 1% tax across the board is unprogressive. Any tax like VAT that equalizes everyone is unprogressive because it assumes that a poor, like my mother is a widow. She owns a house at 31 Kennedy Drive. In the same street, there is what of these image minors. The two are not.
So he's saying, okay, he's got his mom, a pensioner that says in the same street, and he's mentioning about how these people are literally struggling, some of them struggling to feed their families, but yet the regime is asking for such a lot of money monthly. You must pay as a percentage of annually, actually. So if your house is going for 100K, 1% of 100K should be how much? 100,000, 1%. 100,000 is like 10,000. Am I correct? No, for 100,000, no, it's not 10,000. I need to actually 100,000 and how much is it per year? Which is quite a lot of money anyway. And people are saying this is definitely unfair. Like for the poor, it's definitely unfair. But anywho, let's take a listen to him, please.
Over there, that when the government formally dollarized in 2009, it was not because there was any genius in government. The market had done that already. The people had done that already. I remember driving with my wife in Nyamaropa in 2007 when things were so difficult. And those who know Nyamaropa know that there are a lot of our farmers who sell potatoes by the road. So I wanted to buy a packet of potatoes. They said to me, 100 rands or $10 US. I said, but I've got bearer checks. I said, no, we want 100 rands or $10 US. So the dollarization that happened in this economy happened involuntarily in 2009. And what happens now in economics is that once you have a situation of involuntary dollarization, your currency would have been caught in flagrante. It would have been caught red-handed.
That's why people love him. They love him for the vocabulary.
Total lack of confidence, total collapse in your currency. And in the history of mankind,
Oh,
there is
1,000.
no country except Panama
Oh, yeah.
briefly, 1904. There is no country in the world that is involuntarily dollarized, that has been able to dollarize again. So the government's quest to de-dollarize is a losing battle. That's why SI 33 of 2019 collapsed and failed in absolute terms. But the person who made it fail more than anyone else was the central bank and the government of Zimbabwe. Because despite the existence of SI 33 of 2019, every other levy, every other charge, including number plates, which we were buying for $80 US, every other levy charged by the government, including passport fees of US $300, and fuel was being done by the government in US dollars. So the ultimate destroyer, apart from the confidence issue, the biggest destroyer of de-dollarization was the government itself. So it won't work. But I want to move very quickly to reforms. Number one, we have to deal with the confidence issue. And in my respectful opinion, confidence is a function of the electoral process. Confidence is a function of whether the citizen can freely elect those that it wants to lead to. The economy is a subject and function of the social contract. And the social contract is a function of the rule of law, of constitutionalism, of election delivery systems that actually deliver, not election delivery systems that are determined by the electorate and not the electorate. And that is the biggest problem in Zimbabwe. We need to fix our elections. We need to have fixed citizen authority and citizen control in this country. The rest are mechanics. Mechanics number one, we must dollarize again, fully. Number two, we must float the Zimbabwean dollar. We must scrap the auction system and let the market find a resting place for the Zimbabwean dollar. It has been done in this economy before. It has been done in Zimbabwe before. It was done in Rhodesia. At independence in 1980, the Zimbabwean dollar was equivalent to 1 British pound. And the US dollar was 60 cents to the Rhodesian dollar, determined by market forces. Number three is very structurally, we must live within our means. In fact, in my submission, we must amend the Public Finance Management Act. We must amend Section 11 of the the Public Borrowing Act to ensure that the government lives within its means and that the government does not run a budget deficit that's more than 1% of GDP. Because what is killing us and what is one of the major drivers of inflation is broad money supply. Something. And that is our problem. That is our problem. We need to control the budget deficit. And the budget deficit has brought us to where we are. And it's not so much the budget deficit, because every other country in the world, including the United States of America, has got a huge budget deficit. It is how we monetize this budget deficit which is a problem. Because we monetize it creatively and illegally. We print money, bearer checks, bond notes, RTGS dollars, etc., etc. We monetize it through corruption, massive deal. Just to give you an example, it costs an average of $1 million US to construct 1 kilometer of carriageway. So from Beit Bridge to Harare, it's about 500 kilometers. Theoretically, it therefore should be $500 million US, plus add-ons, the cost of money, $700 million. We have been paying our contractors the equivalent, although we say it's in local currency, of $3 million per kilometer is opposed to $1 million a kilometer. So part of the problem of de-dollarization is arbitrage, but arbitrage done in the form of the Zimbabwean dollar. And that's why we see these deficits every year that are then monetized by the government, then adopting. We now have a 2 debt assumptions bill of the Reserve Bank, but none of those debt assumptions have been audited. So we don't know as taxpayers what we are inheriting. It's a disaster. We are inheriting corruption, we are inheriting and assuming inefficiency, we are inheriting rent behavior, we are inheriting arbitrage. So we need to live within our means. We need to scrap export surrender requirements. Because when we scrap export surrender requirements, we increase the supply of foreign currency in the system. Therefore, this encourages and oils the free flotation of the exchange rate and the open availability of foreign currency on the market, because you can't have your cake and eat it. So you can't have export surrender requirements and then pretend you have floated the Zim dollar. These are short-term things that we can do. We need to increase the tax burden on taxpayers in Zimbabwe. Because what we are doing is that our economy is very small, and this economy is prone to recessions. This economy loves recessions. If you look at the graph of this economy, it's permanently in depression mode from 1960 to now. And part of the reason is that we've had governments that go into people's economies, people's pockets, and leave people without disposable income. What drives economy, I believe in Keynesian economics, what drives economy is spending. You can spend your way out of a crisis. But when you go into people's pockets and take away that market money, when you go into people's business balance sheets and take away that money, you've got a problem because you don't have expenditure. And that is our problem. So what this budget is doing is pro-recessionary, leading this economy into a depression. We should reduce the instance of taxation, the instance of interest, and allow people to have disposable incomes so that they can save. And savings, there's a banker there. How can we say we want to develop when we don't have savings? A country like China, the savings to GDP ratio in China is 50%, and it's now the world's second largest economy. A developing country like Zimbabwe needs savings that are at least 25% of GDP. We have none. It makes me so cross that I go to my bank, I shall mention which one, and I can't open a savings account. And each time my banker phones me, he says you don't have a balance because charges have eaten and malseated my balance. We can't develop. We haven't started.
I think the problem that we have in Zimbabwe, we are just trying to use terminology that don't even function, don't even work. The situation in Zimbabwe is beyond just the financial problem. It's beyond that, man. It's you are trying to say, oh, we don't spend, and before you know it, they are buying cars day in, day out. They are buying ambulances. Now you heard recently that they are waiting for instructors or what. I'm not really like an air person, so I just know how to get in the plane and go wherever I'm going. But they were saying that they're waiting for the instructors to come in and assist the Zimbabwean pilots how to fly the ambulances that came in the country. And I remember that was Mnangagwa yesterday, and people were literally screaming at me, "You're crazy! Stop lying to us. We are tired of lies." All I'm saying is, we are just literally like it's a vicious cycle of stagnation. We're just going around. Nothing's happening. Back in the same old stories that we're saying. We've been saying this for the past decades, literally complaining. We still don't have our own money. I've never seen something like that. Every day we are complaining. We are talking about a budget. There is not even no budget. I mean, a budget that you can actually speak in local currency, knowing well that the local currency is not stable. You can wake up in the morning to tell you that it's up 10 times, versus the dollar. Was it not wisdom for them to actually, maybe say this budget in a local currency, in US dollars? But no, because they know, of course, that you trace it. So a lot is going to happen in the next week or so. The dollar is going to fall, inflation is going to go high, so it will be confusion everywhere. Remember, it's the currency exchange rate is different from what's at the Reserve Bank and also on the streets. Now the question you must ask is, how did the money get to the streets? How did all of a sudden the money is more on the streets than it can be in the bank? Red flag. And who's taking the money out? Of course, they must tell us who's doing that. Now they're getting into each and every person's pocket, including the poor, to wipe everything that is in your pocket, in our pockets, everybody. It's very sad, but it's the reality. I'm just so sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of talking about this whole thing. I just feel like something must be done. And now I understand what Trevor said. Trevor Ngube said this when he was having a conversation with with Temba Mliswa. He said, we need to stop elections. He said, we must stop elections. I didn't know how deep this nonsense was, until the shame of an election. He said, we should stop. Let's have a referendum. But again, he said, referendum, our constitution cannot support. But can we have a conversation as a Zimbabwean people, forgetting about all our political affiliations and say, we as Zimbabwean people, things aren't working. How can we fix our country? But no, there are some people who don't want that conversation. Why? Because they know they'll be caught. So they'll rather refuse the conversation and let us just move around the circle, but we are going absolutely nowhere. Same old thing, we're passing a button of poverty to our children. The next generation is born in poverty, and we just want to leave them in chaos. No one knows if we are going or we are coming back. But Savior Kasugbe say, until you learn to listen and to engage with your people, the world won't take you seriously. They won't listen to or engage with you. Charity begins at home. Legitimacy can't be bought for anything. Until now, your people are wondering where you got the mandate to represent them. So this is Kasukure direct to Idi Mnangagwa. You know that he is in you said Dubai. Hey, it's in Dubai. He's in Dubai right now, so he was again for the second time addressing an empty chairs. So that's when he dropped this message. Until you fix things at home, until things are fixed in Zimbabwe, going up and down and speak to people, you're simply wasting your time. Nobody will ever take you serious. I completely agree. Like I always say, my father used to say, any gift that's not beneficial to your family is not worth it transporting. You can't pretend to love people outside when you hate your own family. You must start love at home. So if you can't love people at home, how do you pretend like you're a lover somewhere else? Because energies will speak, If you are a hater, you're a hater. You can't pretend to be a lover. If you don't love people, you should don't love people, It will show by your actions. You can pretend, but not for long. The truth will eventually going to come out. So quite very sad indeed, quite very sad. So this tweet right here, and I honestly, before I read the tweet, I would say the army owes us everything, because in 2017, we went out in support of the army. So I think we're supposed to be dealing with the wrong people here. When we went outside, we knew that the army had taken over the country, trying to protect us from the thugs that they said they'd captured the ex-president, which was Robert Mugabe. Now, the question that we need to ask to the armies, is this what you promised? Is this the Zimbabwe that you wanted for us, that we supported you for? Because we all took to the streets. We supported the army at that time when they were taking out the Robert Mugabe. But is this what they want? Is this the Zimbabwe that they were talking about? They need to tell us. But this is quite a very disturbing tweet. But I'm going to read it as it is. Written by Karina Mujat. Karina Mujat is part of the G40, right? Can you see that the G40 are very vocal right now? Because whenever you drop their person, they're coming in, they're talking. So, there's Bila, right? Bila, who was fired. Also, again, Deputy Minister Minister of the Industry and Commerce. His name is Bila. What's his name? Is Roy Bila. Sorry, my bad, Roy Bila. So Karina said, dearest Roy Bila, you should not be worried that you were fired for saying what you did. I don't know what he said, because we're still waiting for what he said. Who is Emerson Mnangagwa to think, I'm reading as it is, to think he is untouchable and a cut above every citizen in Zimbabwe? Idi's minions and their ego will be their downfall, as the spirits of Vambire will not forsake Mukanya Chiwenga forever. And all our Mash East comrades who were killed like flies by the bloodthirsty Dambudzo. Account you a man, not these bootlickers, Ed's sissies, misleading him. Yes, can tell. They can, yes, can they tell us what is the problem that they do not want Mukanya Chiwenga to be the president after ED? So this is a question. Why can they allow Chiwenga to be the president after ED? Okay, after ED. If it wasn't for Mukanya Chiwenga and our Mash East comrades who elevated the ungrateful scumbag and coward ED, would he have reason to be Zimbabwe's president? ED's entitlement is the most qualifying pig. That's deep. This is the president we're referring to. And the words are really, no, these words are bad, y'all. They're bad. Woo. But I'm just reading the tweet. Pig of our nation is going to be his downfall. Every purchased or dictator, at some point they take their walk of shame. So who does Emerson Mnangagwa think he is? Surely that day will not come for him if he is not engrossed on the thought that Zimbabweans, even ZANU-PF supporters, will tolerate his evil with his family forever. Only one day. Stay safe, Roy Bila, and I hope the miserable of Lacoste will not harm you. I'm watching this ungrateful, not fit for purpose, Madzakutsaku Aidi and his family. Chokwadi nerimezwa ndaona vambire vazvimisa zvaidi nechimuri chake or something. So this is all right. You know, Karina is crazy, man. Karina is crazy. Some of the words he used are very heavy for the president. You know, as much as I may not agree with a lot of things that Mr. Mnangagwa, the president, is doing, there are words that I will never say, because before he is a president, he's more like he's not a grandfather, you know. Looking at him, and I must be respectful at all times, and it's too expressing myself. But you know, these are politicians; they know each other. I mean, remember before he was a president, they were buddies, literally. You know, I used to work very closely to Jonathan Moyo and also to Kasukwere. So pretty much these were like brothers. So when things turn ugly, they're like, hey, who are you? What's up? Why are we here? You know what I mean? What's up? Why are you doing this to us? So I completely understand. I completely understand when they behave the way they do. So when you look at the Tendai Biti one, now I've told you, there is nothing, absolutely nothing that will stop Tendai Biti to make an impact. You know, as much as he supporters, which is Wopo is not the number one supporter, you know. He's always been on the side of Tendai Biti. I was like, no, he should be in parliament. You know, you also heard Muliswa say he should be in parliament. And I said, he does not have to be in parliament to fulfill purpose. We need to understand how to balance our society. If we can equip a number of men and women, youngsters to be specific, you know, then we know that our future is protected. We equip another generation again in the next 5-10 years. That's how you build a nation. But we can't keep on, reshuffling the same old guys. These guys have been making such a huge impact, and they're incredible. They're good at what they're doing. But let's also give an opportunity to young people. Now, Mugano Shua is doing extremely incredibly well. I respect Mugano. Mugano knows his place. He's a professor. He's good. And that's why Mutuli doesn't like him, because, I mean, Mutuli knows that Mugano is smart. He's top class. I mean, I wish Mugano was actually the Minister of Finance in Zimbabwe, in my opinion, because you know, Mune is very loud. He's just screaming, shout. You can't even understand what he's talking about. You know, he's very loud. And he's screaming, and you don't know if he's coming or he's going. So I would prefer to have Mugano in the space of Mutuli. But who am I? I mean, at the end of the day, people chose Mutuli Ngube. But based on his resume, he failed dismally. I mean, as far as this finance sector is concerned, we really could have shuffled and have someone new just for a change, and actually get to monitor and see what will be the outcome. But again, remember, as much as we may say Mutuli is not stable, we must also remember that Mutuli is not alone. Mutuli is operating under instructions. He made it clear before he read the budget that Mr. Mnangagwa had approved, had looked at the budget, assessed it, and say, now go. So which, in other words, is he does not have those powers that you think he has. Remember, there's quite a number of people who have interests there. So it's not going to be an easy thing for him to just come up and say, I think this is what we should do. He has to consider those, the elites. So elites, they have to be considered because they have their own interests. So if you don't play according to their tune, things can turn very ugly. Maybe you may find yourself in the position of where Bila is now, to where Roy Bila is. And also Mnangagwa's illegitimacy, you saw again, pops out in the budget. And Tendai Biti very straight to the point. Now, which makes me wonder, whenever I hear Tendai Biti speaks, not that I'm forgetting that, that audio where he said, Anga Changopera Ega. You know, remember some people said it was fake, but others came and said, no, it was a real audio. It makes me wonder whenever Tendai Biti speaks if he's really behind the Songozo Shavangu drama. It makes me wonder. But by the way, I would like you guys to comment in the comment section. Do you think what Songezo Shavangu is alleging, that Tendai Biti is behind his actions, is correct? Do you really think it's true? Because it makes me wonder, because I'm looking, I mean, you know, one thing that I actually feel is a challenge in the country is we don't know how to communicate. You see, we've been under such a very toxic environment for too long. So communication is becoming a challenge. In other words, is if I speak to someone, I've seen it with a lot of people actually, even that's why now I'm now cutting so many. Now I'm considering to actually leave Twitter. Honestly, I'm considering that. As much as I love to be on Twitter, I realize that most Zimbabweans are very toxic, in my opinion, extremely toxic. And I can't function where people don't know how to be respectful. So as much as I love people, but sometimes I have to reflect on my life and say, no, does this really suit who I am or not? You know, why am I saying this? I feel like, yes, we may we consider the issue of disgruntlement that Tendai Biti and other folks are disgruntled, or they are still disgruntled. But I don't think to an extent that they would push a narrative of trying to ruin Nelson Chamisa. Like the way things are happening around now, especially with Songezo. We're going to touch Songezo tomorrow morning. I don't want to get much into his. I want to look at Tendai Biti based on what he said. Now, you heard him speaking. You heard him talking about how these elections, the illegitimacy, have caused problems. Does that sound like someone who is in support of this whole recall nonsense that's going down right now? You heard him complaining about how much money we are spending on the by-elections. Does that sound like someone who's really behind Songezo Shavangu's actions? You know, and like I said, because we are not a community that respects communication in a respectful manner, someone may speak honestly how they feel, but because we want to push a certain narrative, we take whatever a person says honestly, and then we turn it to be what we want people to hear. I do remember when, Muchangwa said, we are trying to protect, you said we are going to protect Washman and Tendai Biti from Nelson Chamisa. Do you remember? You also mentioned that the only person that is still sane in the opposition part was Songezo Shavangu. So again, makes me wonder, whenever I listen to Tendai Biti speaks, that really is he behind Songezo Shavangu's actions, or we know that is on PF? But they're just using him as a cushion. You know, is he or is MPF are using him as a cushion? In my opinion, I think he, as much as I know, maybe Hoppo was right when he said, no, there are people that are disgruntled, but ZANU-PF is not taking advantage of the situation. Like again, I said, it boils down to the fact that we don't know how to communicate. Because if I can say, maybe I'm not happy with something, I didn't say I hate the person, right? I'm not happy with something. It takes wisdom for a person to say, oh, I understand how she feels and maybe I can do something about it. But someone can say, no, but she hurts me. So it's two people who kind of miss the point. They're taking it personal. So selfishness will say, it's about me. But a wise person will say, no, but it's her that is in problem. How can I resolve the issue? So I feel like it's an issue of communication because the country is toxic, because people are broken. The underlying factors, people's pain. So one little thing that sparkle, it kind of causes a lot of commotion because we are a broken society. Until our brokenness is healed, we are always going to be having issues with one little small thing. We're going to pump out anger. One small these things, and again, until we are healed. Now, let's look at the issue of corruption. Quite interesting, corruption. Again, you know that there's almost like every year, it's about 1.8 billion that Zimbabwe is losing in US dollars through corruption. Illicit financial flows. So Transform Zimbabwe says Zimbabwe doesn't need new taxes. We need to stop the hemorrhaging. Starts with the maturity of acknowledging that Mnangagwa made the criteria to be removed from office a long time ago. This should be the conversation right now. Agreed. Like I said to you, in my opinion, Zimbabwe doesn't need new taxes. Like keep on, literally, pull money out of the poor. No, we don't want that. You can't keep on literally squeezing the poor to death. Taking money, you take a tax in the shop, tax there from your house, it takes, when you drive there, you need to pay toll gates. The tariffs are very high. We don't want that. We need to stop the hemorrhaging. Starts with the maturity to acknowledge, get that point. Start with the maturity to acknowledge that Mnangagwa made the criteria to be removed from office a long time ago. This should be the conversation right now. And in my opinion, I think it's simply a dead cat strategy, to make sure that you don't concentrate on the illegitimacy that we just passed through now. The shame of an election, we are going to be focusing on Songezo, tomorrow this one, tomorrow that one. No. so we don't focus on the important parts. So Transform Zimbabwe says our conversation should have been literally hanging around the illegitimacy of Mr. Mnangagwa, and that he qualified to be removed or to be impeached from the office. This is what they say today. And also considering they tagged the Zimbabwe losing 1.8 billion through corruption annually. 1.8 billion US dollars, y'all. I don't know how many trillions that we are losing in Zimbabwe. Because last time we did calculate the 469 that was also invested by United Kingdom and by Bridge Border, which was literally almost 11 trillion, if I'm not mistaken, in rands. And I could just imagine what South Africa would do with 11 trillion rands. You know, but in Zimbabwe, it does absolutely nothing. Nobody knows what happens to the money. They might disappear. And also, then the news works say there are many definitions of corruption. Here, this definition of corruption, its impact and implications from cleric Gary Skinner. Skinner was born in Zimbabwe to missionary parents and is a fourth-generation preacher. He has pastored in Canada, in Zambia, and in Uganda. Listen and learn from Skinner. He defined corruption in a way that is so powerful. Definitely outstanding. And I want you guys to take a listen. It's so personal. When you listen to him, it's very personal. It's one thing to hear about corruption as a narrative word. It's another thing when you really take it personal, understand how much damage it's causing. That's what you need to focus on. The corruption that is in Zimbabwe. How much damage it's causing in our societies. Take a listen.
That sucks and drains the health out of something good. Corruption in society is an evil moral infection that keeps community in a state of perpetual sickness. Corruption is a moral virus. It's so potent it leaves its host sick, lethargic, and unable to realize and accomplish all that a well person can. Where corruption thrives, poverty and not prosperity thrives. Wealth is grabbed into the greedy, grubby hands of those who get fat on the toil and labor of good people. Corruption benefits only temporarily those who participate in it. Everyone else is a victim of the theft, the deceit, the dishonesty, and the lies that corruption feeds on. You need to know that a corrupt person is stealing from you.
Right.
Corruption is filthy work and despicable acts of treachery done under the table and behind closed doors. Corruption is a disgusting shame. Corruption keeps a nation back from true development and from progress. Wise investors steer clear of a corrupt environment. They would rather put their resources into a place where the playing field of opportunity is equal for all and not bent towards feeding the financial lust of corrupt, lying, cheating, thieving politicians and government officials. How many wonderful development projects have been lost because the investors didn't want to do business in a swamp of evil? When those great projects go to another nation or to some other place, we all lose. Believe me when I tell you that corruption steals from you, it steals from all of us. Corruption plunders the nation's wealth. Corrupt people compromise on truth, equity, and fairness, choosing instead to feed off the short-term benefits of crookedness, exploitation, and financial perversion. Corruption is not just a personal matter. It's a culture. It's a way of life, not just for individual people, but for companies, communities, governments, and nations. Corrupt nations, hiding behind large companies, will seek to invest in other weak nations in order to take over the assets of the nation that they've invested into. They will provide financial loans to a nation for the much-needed infrastructure, and they will do it with assets that they provide. They will sign contracts by lining the pockets of rotten government officials who participate in this kind of corruption and are then held hostage by their own deceit and greed. Corruption is nothing less than a form of theft and national robbery. A corrupt person steals from everyone in society. Mm-hmm. Corruption.
And it's getting bad in Zim. Honestly, corruption in Zimbabwe is a pandemic. It is a pandemic because everyone everywhere is corrupt. The question we need to ask is, how are you going to turn? The only way to turn is to sit around the table and say, is this the Zimbabwe that we want? Is this the kind of people we want to be known for? Is this the leaders that we want to pass our children? I just don't know when are people going to sit around the table and really find solution to resolve our ills. because we have to. Honestly, something has to be done. You heard Mangudla made it very clear that we have to get into our pockets. That's where the money is. Did you hear him saying that? He said the money is in your pockets, so we are coming after your pockets. Take a listen. He's laughing actually. Can you hear that?
From within the country. For purposes of roads, madam, even a Marema SDRs here, you have 0%, now you have to 4.2%, which means Yakudodula, as I put a day Mahara. Such Mahara, those the budget, remember taxes. I got one day, those taxes are there for purpose of developing an economy.
Did you hear that? And money is in your pockets. But when you ask for accountability, no, they don't want to hear that. You must never ask for accountability, but they want your money. But don't question how we use the money. Don't question us when we spend money on buying cars. Just tell me how much money did we spend on these past elections. They are alleging that we spent 188 million on this past election. Apart from the 5 million that we spend right now on this by-election, and there's another by-election coming as well in February, which means we're going to spend more money again on that by-election, excuse me. So how much money are we spending? So we are just spending on election, and there's no election at all. It's chaos everywhere. The sham of an election that you saw, does that sound like a 1.8 million, 1.8, no, 188, sorry, my bad, 188 million. These are trillions of rands. That's they're claiming we spend on that past election that you saw on the 23rd and 24th. Does that sound like something that we spend 188 million? But that's what they tell you. If you ask questions, if you ask accountability, they'll tell you, why are you talking? Keep quiet. But now they're saying we are coming after your pockets. We want the money, and the money can only come from you. And when you give us the money, you don't ask us how we use it. I've never hear any relationship of that sort. If family members, married couples can ask for accountability, how did you use the money that we get, that we put in the account? You went and you scanned, we had you. We saw the message that you were busy shopping. How did you spend the money? Show us what you bought. But no, these people, you don't ask them questions. If you ask, you're in trouble. Shut up. Just give us the money. Very sad. And he's laughing, and there's nothing funny actually. But to him, it's funny. It's funny because they know we use force and you give us what we want. And we abuse in return. Absolutely embarrassing. But Brighton said he cautioned a sham election, dodgy cabinet. A sham of an election, the dodgy cabinet, dead economy, high inflation, weak currency, high taxation, perfect storm loading. I agree. I'm a firm believer that if the foundation be faulty, the Bible says, if the foundation be faulty, what can a righteous man do? A righteous man should be the anchor point. What about a sinful man do? It's going to be worse. If the righteous man can stand still when the foundation is faulty, that nothing works. What about a wicked man? It's going to be worse, which means we are heading for disaster, whether you like it or not. And when we say we're heading for disaster, but like for me, I'm just going to pray because, I remember my daddy said, you can't pray against a prophetic agenda, quote unquote, but you can only seek exemption. You can pray to seek exemption to be exempted, but you can't pray against it. The danger is going to come, but we have to pray that we get exempted. The wicked must pay for their deeds. We can only do what we can, but we can't keep on suffering the consequences of their actions. They must take responsibility. If evil comes, they have to face it head on. While we are free, I don't know what's going on here, but praise the Lord. I swear, can I tell you something very interesting here? What's happening? I know my son would have said, Daddy, what's happening? Okay, yo.